There is a revelation that can change everything you learned in school, but that cutting-edge quantum science is proving every week in an irrefutable way. You are not just a lonely person living a limited linear life. You are, in fact, infinite versions of yourself existing in parallel dimensions simultaneously. Imagine this like a movie with several different endings. There's a version of you that has already achieved everything you desire. She's not struggling to get these things. She simply lives them as natural reality. And here's the fascinating part. That version is connected to you right now. How does this work? Think of your consciousness like a radio station. You can tune into different frequencies and receive different programs. The fulfilled version of you is constantly broadcasting, sending information, insights, and opportunities to your current frequency. You've already experienced this without realizing it. You know those moments when you just know that something is right for you? When an opportunity shows up at the perfect time? When you find exactly the information you needed? Quantum physicists explain this through the concept of non-locality, the idea that information can be transmitted instantly across space and time. Your consciousness operates outside of linear time. While your body lives in the physical present, your mind can access information from different moments simultaneously. That's why you can have intuitions about the future or insights that seem to come out of nowhere. What you're experiencing right now, finding this content, is a perfect example. It's not a coincidence. It's your fulfilled version guiding you to information that will accelerate your transformation. Here's the mistake that 90% of people make, and why their lives don't change. They recognize the signs, feel the guidance, but then do something devastating. They go back to default mode thinking and acting. It's like receiving a treasure map and then putting it away in a drawer. Why does this happen? Because we've been conditioned to trust logic more than intuition. When something doesn't make sense to our rational mind, we dismiss it as magical thinking. But here's the scientific truth. Your future self isn't just sending information. He's transmitting a specific frequency, an energetic pattern that corresponds to the reality you can live. When you learn to tune into and embody that frequency, you dramatically accelerate the manifestation process. Let me explain through a personal experience. A few years ago, I was completely stuck. I knew what I wanted, but it seemed impossible to achieve. During a meditation, I had an experience that changed everything. It wasn't a thought or visualization. It was a complete bodily sensation of what it would be like to be the version of me who had already accomplished everything. I could feel his confidence, his calm, his certainty. And I realized something revolutionary. That version wasn't someone I needed to become. It was who I already was, without the layers of limitation I had built. Here's the fundamental principle. The quantum field, the energetic matrix of all reality, responds to your identity, not your desires. It reads who you're being energetically and creates experiences that match that frequency. That's why affirmations alone fail. You can repeat "I am prosperous" 1,000 times, but if your energy still vibrates scarcity, that's what you'll experience. Your future self doesn't need to convince himself of anything. He naturally embodies the energy of what he desires. How do you establish real contact with that version of yourself? First principle: internal coherence. Your future self lives in a state where thoughts, emotions, and actions are perfectly aligned. He doesn't want one thing and believe another. There's no internal conflict. There's a clear, unified direction. Here's the technical problem that prevents most people from receiving clear guidance. Internal conflict creates energetic interference. Think of your consciousness as a communication system. When you want one thing but believe another, it's like having two radio stations broadcasting on the same frequency. You only hear static. Practical example: you say you want a loving relationship, but your actions show you don't believe you deserve love. This contradiction creates noise in the system, making it difficult to receive clear guidance about how to attract what you desire. How do you identify these contradictions? Do an honest, energetic audit. Compare what you say you want with how you actually act. Observe your declared dreams versus your daily choices. Analyze your ideal self-image against how you treat yourself in practice. Your future self exists in a state that psychologists call congruence, where thoughts, emotions, and actions are perfectly aligned. He doesn't experience the internal conflict that creates static in the communication system. Your future self has 3 fundamental characteristics. First, he operates from love, not fear, so his decisions come from a place of possibility, not protection. Second, he chooses expansion over contraction, growing toward his potential even when it's uncomfortable. Third, he trusts universal intelligence because he's learned to trust the wisdom within himself. How do you tune into that frequency? Every time you face a choice, ask what your future self would choose. Love or fear? Expansion or contraction? Trust or control? This is the calibration that strengthens the quantum communication signal. Here's a concept that will change how you see time and reality. Your future self remembers this exact moment. From his perspective, this isn't a future event that may or may not happen. It's a memory. He remembers watching this content, feeling the recognition, realizing that something was shifting inside you. More importantly, he remembers the decision you made afterward, because there's a fork happening right now. In one timeline, you dismiss this as interesting but impractical and return to the same patterns. In another, you recognize this as the catalyst you were waiting for and actually implement changes. Here's where most people get lost. They think receiving the information is enough. But information without implementation is just entertainment. Your future self can send all the signs in the universe, but you need to meet him halfway through conscious action. This doesn't require dramatic, immediate changes. In fact, sustainable transformation happens through consistent micro-choices made from a new identity. When you wake up in the morning, instead of operating on autopilot, you consciously ask how your upgraded self would move through the day. Practical examples of this identity shift. Maybe your upgraded self contributes in that meeting instead of staying silent out of insecurity. Maybe he invests in personal development instead of spending money on distractions. Maybe he has honest conversations instead of avoiding conflict out of fear. The principle behind this is simple but powerful. Small choices made consistently from an expanded identity create exponential changes in reality. Your future self lives in a reality where your desires are natural and expected, because he understood something fundamental about how reality works. He realized he's not trying to manifest a different life. He is the manifestation of a possibility that always existed. The external world always reflects the internal frequency. So when he changed his internal frequency, external reality automatically reorganized itself. This explains why gratitude is so transformative. Not gratitude for what you already have physically, but gratitude for what already exists in the field of possibilities. Your future self feels gratitude, not hope, because for him, these things are already real. When you can generate those same feelings now, you're literally tuning into the frequency of that reality and accelerating its manifestation. Now I'm going to ask for something specific that will change your experience immediately. Stop for a moment and connect sensorially with that version of yourself, not through thought, but through sensation. How does that version carry herself physically? What's the quality of her energy? How does she move through the world? More importantly, what's her internal dialogue like? The tone, the quality, the nature of the conversation she has with herself? What you're feeling isn't fantasy or creative visualization, it's quantum communication happening in real time. You're accessing information from a version of yourself that exists on a different frequency. These sensations are literally your energetic coordinates, your internal GPS showing the direction you're moving toward. Here's where the process becomes fascinating from a practical standpoint. The more you can embody and sustain that energy in your daily life, the more you begin to notice tangible changes in your external reality. Opportunities that were previously invisible start appearing. People aligned with your goals show up naturally. Resources that seemed inaccessible become available. This happens through a simple but powerful principle. You're finally operating on the same vibrational frequency as your desires. It's like tuning a radio station. When the frequency is aligned, you receive the signal clearly. Your future self operates from a completely different paradigm. He doesn't struggle, force, or push to make things happen. Instead, he attracts through energetic alignment. He understands that everything he needs is already in motion toward him, and his role is to remain clear, open, and receptive to those opportunities. When you're constantly worried about how things will manifest, you're creating energetic resistance that blocks the very flow you're trying to create. It's like trying to receive a radio transmission while generating interference on the same channel. This completely redefines the concept of patience. Patience isn't passive waiting or resignation. It's active faith. Trusting the natural timing of your life while continuing to consistently show up as the person you're becoming. Your future self understands that divine timing isn't about delay, but about perfect preparation. Every moment between now and your complete manifestation is preparing you to not just receive, but sustain and fully enjoy what's coming. Now I'm going to ask for something specific that will significantly amplify your connection to this process. Pause this video and comment below with this exact phrase, "I choose to be who I really am." But don't do it mechanically. Feel the weight of those words. Recognize that by commenting that phrase, you're making a conscious declaration to the quantum field that you're genuinely ready to enter deeper alignment with your future self. You're signaling that you're not here just as a passive observer. You're here for real transformation. The act of declaring your readiness creates a coherent energetic signal that your future self can work with more powerfully. It's literally like adjusting a radio's tuning to a clearer frequency. So go ahead, pause this video and comment, "I choose to be who I really am." As you do this, your future self wants you to understand something fundamental about your journey so far. You're not behind. You're not arriving late. You haven't missed your window of opportunity. Every experience you've had, every challenge you've faced, every moment you felt lost or confused, all of it prepared you for this exact moment of recognition. Every challenge built your capacity for resilience. Every setback refined your clarity about what truly matters to you. Every period of feeling lost deepened your genuine desire for authentic alignment with who you really are. Your future self has a completely different perspective on your journey. He sees the perfection in the path you've traveled, even in the moments you consider mistakes or failures. He understands that even your perceived detours were actually course corrections guiding you toward your highest timeline. That's why he's not worried or anxious about you. On the contrary, he's genuinely excited because he knows you're about to remember something extraordinary about your true nature and potential. But remembering alone isn't enough to create lasting change. Integration is what transforms understanding into lived reality. Your future self doesn't just know these truths as interesting concepts. He has completely integrated them into his way of being and acting in the world. He's learned to navigate physical reality from a multidimensional perspective. He makes decisions based on intuition and then supports them with inspired, practical action. This means that as you begin receiving these transmissions more clearly, you need to be willing to act on the guidance you receive, even when it doesn't make complete logical sense to your current self. Your future self operates from a much broader perspective than your current self can access. Sometimes the next step he's guiding you to take might seem lateral or even like a step backward from your current viewpoint. But he can see the whole landscape where you can only see the next move. Learning to trust this internal guidance is learning to trust yourself at a deeper level than you've ever accessed before. It's recognizing that you contain wisdom far beyond what your conditioned mind can comprehend. Your future self isn't a separate entity from you. He is you operating from a state of complete remembrance of who you really are. Now, I'm genuinely curious about something I'd like you to share in the comments below. Tell me about a time when you felt your future self guiding you. Maybe it was an intuitive impulse that led you to something beautiful and unexpected, or a decision that didn't make logical sense at the time, but felt absolutely right at the deepest level. What happened when you trusted that internal knowing deeper than rational logic? Here's something fascinating about this embodiment process. The moment you truly integrate this understanding into your way of being, you automatically become a transmission for other people. Your energy, your presence, the way you move through the world begins to activate the same latent remembrance in others. This happens naturally, without conscious effort. You become a walking reminder that genuine transformation is possible, that there's a different way to live, that we're all more powerful and capable than we've been conditioned to believe. If what I'm sharing is creating real resonance in your system, if you feel something moving inside you that recognizes these words as truth, then I invite you to subscribe. But not just to this channel as more content to consume. Subscribe to this frequency of living. Subscribe to consistently operating from your highest self. Subscribe to trusting the inherent intelligence of your own growth and transformation process. Subscribe to being part of a community that understands we're all here to remember and express who we really are in our essence. When you click the subscribe button, you're making a commitment to stay connected to this evolutionary conversation. You're choosing to continue receiving the transmissions and insights that will guide you back to your authentic center, to your deepest truth. Because this transcends watching videos as entertainment or passive consumption of information. This is about being part of a collective awakening, a community of people who are consciously choosing to embody their fullest potential and live aligned with who they really are. Your future self lives in a reality where this level of consciousness we're exploring is completely normal. It's a reality where people naturally operate from love instead of fear as their default state, where collaboration replaces competition as the natural form of interaction, where everyone intuitively understands that our evolution is collective. We rise together, or we don't rise at all. Every person who remembers their true nature and enters alignment with their highest self is contributing to making that reality more accessible for everyone. This happens through what scientists call the morphic field, a shared information field that influences the entire species. That's why your personal transformation has implications much greater than just your individual life. You're not just changing your own circumstances. You're contributing to the morphic field of possibility for our entire species. Your future self exists in a timeline where enough people have made this consciousness shift that it's created a new baseline for human experience. But that timeline begins with you, in this moment, with your willingness to receive these transmissions and then embody them in your practical life. So let me ask some questions that might completely change your perspective. What would change in your life if you truly trusted that your future self is actively guiding you? What would you do differently if you knew for certain that every intuitive impulse, every moment of deep recognition, Every meaningful synchronicity is direct guidance leading you toward your highest timeline? What if you stopped waiting for external permission or validation and started honoring the permission your future self has already given you? What if you stopped looking for more proof that this is real and started becoming the living proof of this possibility? What if you realize that the very fact that you're watching this content, feeling this recognition, perceiving this possibility is all the confirmation you need that something greater is moving through your life? Your future self remembers the exact moment when you stopped doubting and started fully trusting the process. He remembers when you finally understood that you didn't need to have everything figured out before beginning. You just needed to follow the guidance as it appeared, step by step. He remembers when you realized that the path to your dreams wasn't about forcing results or controlling every detail, but about aligning with your truth and allowing life to unfold naturally. That moment of shift is available to you right now. Not someday in the future when you feel more prepared. Not tomorrow when you have more clarity. Not next week when you have your life more organized. Right now, this is the moment your future self remembers as the definitive turning point. The quantum field operates according to a fundamental principle. It's always responding to your dominant energetic frequency. If you're consistently operating from a state of lack, limitation, and fear, that's precisely what gets reflected back to you in your external experience. But the moment you begin genuinely embodying abundance, possibility, and love, even before seeing external evidence of it, that's when reality begins reorganizing itself around you. Your future self understood something fundamental about the nature of reality. He's not the passive effect of his circumstances. He's the active cause of them. He developed the ability to generate his internal state independently of external conditions and then observe as the external world reorganizes to match his internal frequency. This is what it means to be a conscious creator. This is what it means to fully step into your power as an infinite being, having a temporary human experience. Your future self isn't waiting for the universe to grant him what he desires. He understood that he's an extension of the same creative intelligence that forms galaxies and makes flowers grow. He remembered that he is the universe expressing itself through human form. And you are that too, right now. Not someday in the future when you've evolved more, or learned more, or become more spiritually developed. Right now, in this moment. You are the same infinite intelligence that your future self remembered he is. The only difference is the degree to which that truth is integrated and active in your daily experience. That integration happens through conscious choice, moment by moment, decision by decision. Every time you choose love over fear, every time you choose expansion over contraction, every time you choose to trust life's natural intelligence instead of trying to control every detail, you're becoming more coherent with your future self's frequency. And here's the truly fascinating aspect. As you become more energetically coherent, communication with that expanded version of yourself becomes clearer. Guidance becomes stronger and more obvious. Synchronicities become more frequent and meaningful. It's like tuning into a radio station that was always broadcasting. You just needed to adjust your receptive frequency to receive it clearly. Your future self wants you to understand that you're already receiving everything you need. The ideas that inspire you, the opportunities that appear in your life, the right people who show up at the right time. These aren't random occurrences or coincidences. They're the universe responding directly to the clear signal of your expanding consciousness. But you need to be willing to actively receive. You need to be willing to say yes to opportunities that your current self might consider intimidating or challenging. You need to be willing to trust internal guidance that doesn't always make immediate logical sense. You need to be willing to act from the energy of who you're becoming, not just from who you've been up until now. This is where faith becomes a concrete practice. Faith isn't blind belief or passive hope. Faith is acting based on knowledge that exists beyond what your current circumstances suggest is possible. Your future self operates from that kind of practical faith because he's directly experienced how reality responds when you consistently align with your deepest truth. He learned that the universe isn't testing you to determine if you're worthy of your desired experiences. The universe is constantly offering experiences that correspond exactly to your predominant energetic frequency. Consistently elevate your frequency, and different experiences naturally become available. It's not a matter of deserving or earning through effort. It's a matter of energetic alignment. And alignment isn't something you achieve once and then maintain automatically forever. It's a conscious moment-by-moment choice to return to your center, to remember who you really are, to consistently choose from love instead of fear. Your future self developed the ability to quickly return to alignment when temporarily off course. He learned that occasional oscillation is a natural part of the growth process, not a sign of failure or personal inadequacy. That's why self-compassion is an absolutely crucial element for this transformation work. Your future self treats himself with infinite kindness and patience because he understood a fundamental principle. Judgment and self-criticism create interference in the quantum communication system. The more lovingly you treat yourself, the clearer and more receptive the communication channel becomes. In this moment, your future self is sending the energy of complete and unconditional acceptance for exactly where you are in your journey. He's not disappointed with your progress so far. He's not frustrated with the speed of your growth. He's not judging your past or present choices. On the contrary, he sees absolute perfection in your timing, because he has access to a much broader perspective than you can see from where you currently stand. He can see how every experience, every challenge, every moment of your life has contributed to preparing you for this exact moment of awakening and recognition. He wants you to deeply understand that every experience you've had has prepared you perfectly for this moment. Every relationship you've lived, every job you've had, every challenge you've faced, every victory you've achieved, all of it is intricately woven together to create the ideal conditions for your remembrance of who you really are. There's nothing in your journey that was a mistake or a detour. There are no wasted experiences or lost time. Even the moments you consider failures or setbacks were actually essential components preparing you to have the capacity to receive and integrate these understandings now. Your future self has a completely different perspective on your history. Where you might see mistakes, he sees necessary learning. Where you might see delays, he sees perfect preparation. Where you might see failures, he sees the development of resilience and wisdom. This perspective of total acceptance isn't passivity or complacency. It's recognition that everything in your life has contributed to creating exactly the person you need to be to embody your highest potential. It's understanding that your unique journey, with all its ups and downs, has created in you the depth, compassion, and wisdom necessary to live authentically from who you really are. Your future self also wants you to understand a fundamental principle that can completely change your experience of personal growth. Transformation doesn't need to be a difficult and painful process. The struggle you've been experiencing isn't because the path of evolution is inherently difficult. It's because you've been swimming against the natural current instead of learning to flow harmoniously with it. The moment you stop resisting the inherent intelligence of your own growth process and begin consciously cooperating with it, everything becomes significantly easier and more fluid. This doesn't mean challenges simply disappear from your life. It means you develop a completely different and more constructive relationship with challenges when they appear. Instead of seeing difficulties as unwanted obstacles, you begin recognizing them as invitations to expand your capacity and understanding. Instead of asking the victim question, "Why is this happening to me?" you develop the habit of asking the evolutionary question, "How is this serving my highest evolution?" This shift in perspective is transformative because it repositions you from victim of circumstances to active collaborator in your own growth. Your future self developed the ability to see every experience as valuable feedback from the universe. When things flow easily and without resistance, he interprets this as confirmation that he's aligned with his highest path. When things seem difficult or encounter resistance, he sees this as useful information that something in his approach or perspective needs adjustment. Everything becomes useful guidance. Everything is serving your awakening and evolution. If this understanding is creating a noticeable shift in your consciousness, if you feel something moving in your way of seeing life, pause for a moment to click the like button and subscribe to stay connected to this frequency of transformation. Let's continue exploring these concepts, but let's dive even deeper into this quantum communication system. Understanding how it actually works in practice fundamentally changes how you navigate and create your daily reality. Your future self exists in what quantum physicists call a collapsed wave function. This means he has moved from a state of pure potential to actualized and stabilized reality. Here's the fascinating aspect. This collapsed state creates an energetic gravitational pull on all potential versions of you that exist in the quantum field. It's as if your actualized version became a magnet for all your possibilities. To visualize this, imagine your life as a vast ocean of waves of possibility. Your future self has become a stabilized island in that ocean. Every choice you make moves you closer to that island or carries you further from it. But because that island exists as a fixed point in the quantum field, it's constantly sending signals, like energetic beams from a lighthouse, by which you can learn to navigate. These guidance signals don't always reach you as clear thoughts or ideas. Often, they come as sudden knowing that seems to arise from nowhere, as specific bodily sensations, or as emotional shifts that seem to have no obvious external cause. Your future self developed the ability to communicate through the language of energy because energy transcends the limitations of linear time. While mental communication is limited by temporal sequence, energetic communication can traverse different moments instantly. When you suddenly feel a wave of excitement about an opportunity that doesn't make complete logical sense, that might be your future self signaling that this specific path leads toward the island of your actualized potential. But here's where many people get confused about how this process works. They assume that following their future self's guidance means everything will automatically be smooth and easy. That's not an accurate understanding of how the system operates. Your future self is guiding you toward your highest evolution, not necessarily toward your greatest immediate comfort. Sometimes the path that leads to your actualized self requires you to navigate through fears, release limiting attachments, and grow beyond the boundaries of who you've been up until now. Your future self has complete memory of every moment of discomfort he experienced during his own growth journey, and has deep compassion for what you're currently going through. But he also understands that every challenge you're facing is precisely calibrated to develop the specific capacities you'll need to sustain the expanded reality he's living. In other words, challenges aren't random obstacles. They're specifically designed developmental exercises to prepare you to embody your fullest potential. Your future self isn't sending difficulties into your life. He's helping you recognize the growth opportunities that were already naturally present in your experience. That's why resistance creates unnecessary suffering, while acceptance facilitates genuine transformation. When you fight against what's happening in your life, you're essentially arguing with the intelligence of your own evolution. Your future self never resisted the growth process. He learned to trust that every experience was serving his development, even when he couldn't immediately see how it worked. And here's a profound understanding. Your future self exists in a state we could call quantum gratitude. He's not grateful for what happened to him, as if he were a victim of external circumstances. He's grateful for what happened through him, recognizing that he was always an active participant in his own becoming process. This fundamental shift in perspective completely transforms how you relate to your current challenges. When you can look at your life from this expanded quantum perspective, you begin to perceive patterns that were invisible before. You begin to recognize that what you thought were random events or misfortunes were actually precisely calibrated experiences designed to guide you toward your highest timeline. That job that didn't work out wasn't a personal rejection. It was a redirection. That relationship that ended wasn't your failure. It was a natural completion. That financial setback wasn't a punishment. It was a necessary recalibration. Your future self sees the perfection in your entire path because he has the perspective of the final outcome. It's like watching a movie for the second time. Everything that seemed random or confusing on the first viewing now makes perfect sense because you know how all the elements connect to create the complete story. Your future self is watching your movie for the second time and wants you to trust the plot even when you can't see where it's leading. But trusting in this context isn't a passive attitude. It's not sitting back and waiting for things to simply happen to you. Trusting is actively participating in your own evolution by saying yes to opportunities that align with your highest self, even when they seem challenging or uncertain. Your future self developed the crucial ability to distinguish between fear that genuinely keeps you safe and fear that keeps you limited and small. He learned to feel the difference between legitimate intuitive warning and ego-based resistance. This discernment is fundamental, because as you begin receiving clearer transmissions from your future self, you'll often feel called to make choices that your current identity considers threatening or risky. Your ego mind, which has been conditioned to keep you safe and predictable, will generate all kinds of logically convincing reasons why you shouldn't follow that internal guidance. It will tell you to be practical, be realistic. Don't set your expectations too high. But your future self operates from a completely different set of assumptions about what's possible. Through direct experience, he's proven to himself that the universe is fundamentally supportive, that there's always a viable path forward, that all necessary resources become available when they're genuinely needed. He learned to make decisions based on abundance instead of scarcity, on possibility instead of limitation, on love instead of fear. And here's the beautiful and powerful paradox. The more you consciously act from the energy and perspective of your future self, the more you naturally begin embodying his reality. It's not that you're pretending to be someone you're not. You're finally expressing who you've always authentically been, underneath all the layers of social conditioning and self-imposed limitations. Your future self isn't a different person you become through effort or development. He's who you naturally are when you remove all the layers of conditioning, limitations, and false identities that have been overlaid onto your authentic essence. This process of gradual removal, of shedding what isn't genuinely you, is what mystical traditions have called the dark night of the soul. But your future self wants you to understand that this dissolution isn't divine punishment or indication that you're doing something wrong. It's simply the natural process of authentic transformation. Just as a caterpillar must completely dissolve inside the cocoon before emerging as a butterfly, aspects of your conditioned identity must dissolve before your true nature can fully emerge. Your future self has deep compassion for this dissolution process because he has vivid memory of how disorienting and challenging it can be. There were moments in his own journey when he questioned everything, when nothing seemed to make sense, when he felt like he was completely losing himself. But now he understands with clarity that he wasn't losing himself. He was losing the false sense of identity that was never his true self to begin with. That's why spiritual traditions often speak about dying before you die. It doesn't refer to physical death, but to the death of the ego identity that was never your real essence. Your future self completely navigated through this process of psychological death and rebirth, and he wants you to know that what emerges on the other side is significantly more beautiful, authentic, and powerful than what gets left behind. But the dissolution doesn't happen all at once in one dramatic event. It happens gradually in layers, in natural cycles, in spirals of increasing depth. Every time you consciously choose to align with your highest self, instead of reacting from old conditioned patterns, another layer of false identity naturally dissolves. Every time you choose to trust your intuition instead of just your logical mind, another layer of limitation falls away. Every time you consciously act from love instead of fear, another aspect of your true nature is revealed and integrated. Your future self exists in a reality where this purification process is complete, where he lives consistently from his authentic nature without significant interference from false conditioning or self-imposed limitations. But he wants you to understand that the journey toward that state is as sacred and valuable as the final destination. Every moment of genuine growth, every insight, every recognition is precious because it's all part of your unique awakening. And your personal awakening isn't an isolated event. Your future self lives in a reality where he clearly understands that individual consciousness and collective consciousness are intimately interconnected. As you raise your own vibrational frequency, you automatically contribute to raising the frequency of the entire human collective. As you embody more love, more wisdom, more authenticity in your daily life, you make it easier for other people to access those same qualities within themselves. That's why your personal transformation has implications that extend far beyond your own life experience. You're not just healing limiting patterns within yourself. You're healing entire lineages of limitation that have passed through your family, your community, your culture. You're not just awakening to your own potential. You're actively contributing to the evolutionary awakening of our entire species. Your future self carries this understanding as both a profound responsibility and a profound honor. He knows that every person who consciously chooses to embody their highest potential creates what scientists call morphic resonance, an information field that makes it easier for others to make the same evolutionary choice. It's like the first person to cut a path through dense jungle. That person has to clear all the obstacles and navigate through unknown terrain. But everyone who follows can walk much more easily because the path has been established and prepared. Your future self is part of a collective of beings who have consciously awakened and who are holding energetic space for humanity's evolutionary leap. He's not isolated or separate from others who have made this transformation journey. He's part of an interconnected network of consciousness that extends across time and space. When you begin consciously embodying the energy and perspective of your future self, you're joining this evolutionary collective, becoming an active part of this planetary transformation movement. But it's important to understand that this isn't about achieving spiritual perfection or developing some sense of superiority. Your future self learned that true spiritual maturity includes completely embracing your humanity, not trying to transcend or deny it. He developed the capacity to be infinitely compassionate with his own growth process and with other people's growth processes. He deeply understands that everyone is exactly where they need to be in their own unique journey. And he holds loving space for all beings to awaken in their own natural timing, without judgment or impatience. This unconditional compassion extends especially to your current self. Your future self looks at you with deep love, complete acceptance, and genuine appreciation for your willingness to grow and evolve. He has vivid memory of every struggle you're going through, every doubt you're experiencing, every moment of confusion or frustration. And he wants you to understand that all of this isn't just acceptable, but genuinely necessary. All of this is part of the perfect and natural unfolding of your consciousness. As you begin integrating these understandings more deeply into your daily experience, you might begin noticing that your relationship with time starts transforming. Your future self doesn't experience time as a linear progression from past through present to future. Instead, he exists in an eternal present moment that somehow contains all time, past, present, and future simultaneously. That's why he can communicate with you across what appears to be temporal distance. Because from his expanded perspective, there really isn't temporal distance. There's only this eternal present moment that contains all possibilities and potentials. When you learn to access this state of eternal presence yourself, everything fundamentally changes about how you relate to your goals and desires. Instead of feeling like you're working hard towards something that exists in some distant future, you begin understanding that you're discovering something that already exists completely in the present moment. Your dreams and aspirations aren't located somewhere out there in the future, waiting for you to eventually reach them. They exist here and now, waiting for you to energetically align with their frequency. This fundamental shift in perspective completely transforms the entire process of manifestation and conscious creation. Instead of trying to force something to happen through effort and willpower, you begin allowing something to emerge naturally. Instead of forcing your way toward your goals through compulsive action, you begin consciously removing the internal blocks that prevent their natural expression. Instead of constantly striving and fighting against resistance, you begin surrendering to life's natural flow and receiving what's trying to emerge through you. Your future self developed mastery in the art of conscious receiving. He understood that the universe is constantly offering exactly what he needs for his growth and evolution. But he had to develop the refined capacity to recognize and receive these offerings. This capacity isn't something you develop through mental analysis or strategic thinking. It's a skill you cultivate through feeling, through subtle perceiving, through trusting the energetic information that's always flowing around you. That's why practices like meditation, contemplation, and other forms of consciousness cultivation are fundamental to this work. They help you develop your sensitivity to the quantum field and your ability to perceive the subtle energies and frequencies that contain valuable information about your highest path. Your future self lives in a state we could call constant meditation. This doesn't mean he's constantly sitting cross-legged with eyes closed, but that he maintains a state of open and receptive awareness that allows him to receive guidance continuously. He developed the ability to read the energy of situations before engaging with them mentally. He can intuitively sense whether an opportunity is aligned with his highest path before even logically understanding all the details. He cultivated what we could call quantum intuition, the ability to feel the energetic potential of different choices and consistently follow the path that feels most expansive and alive. But developing this level of energetic sensitivity requires that you intentionally slow down, cultivate inner stillness, and create conscious space between stimulus and response. In our culture characterized by constant noise and perpetual busyness, this might initially seem counterproductive. Your conditioned mind might argue that slowing down means falling behind, that contemplation is a luxury you can't afford. But your future self understands that this inner stillness is actually the most practical thing you can cultivate, because it's from this centered stillness that all genuinely inspired and effective action emerges. When you operate from this centered place, you can accomplish more with significantly less effort because you're aligned with the natural flow of universal intelligence instead of working against it. You make decisions more quickly and with greater confidence because you're not constantly second-guessing your intuition with excessive mental analysis. You attract opportunities more naturally because you're operating from a clear and coherent frequency that the universe can respond to effectively. Your future self wants you to understand that developing this energetic coherence isn't about achieving constant perfection. It's about cultivating consistency. It's about consciously returning to your center repeatedly, not about staying there without interruption. He learned that consciousness works like a muscle. The more you intentionally exercise it, the stronger and more reliable it becomes. Every time you consciously choose presence over distraction, alignment over automatic reaction, love over fear, you're strengthening your capacity to live consistently from your highest self. What's one specific small choice you could make today that would align you more completely with your future self's energy? Consider leaving that intention in the comments. Sometimes, articulating our commitments publicly amplifies their manifesting power. And here's a fascinating aspect of this process. The stronger your connection to your future self becomes, the more you begin receiving transmissions not just from him, but from all possible versions of yourself across all potential timelines. You begin accessing what quantum physicists call the Akashic field, the information field that contains the collective wisdom of all your possible selves. Sometimes you might receive creative inspiration that seems to be emanating from a version of you who developed as an artist. Sometimes you might access problem-solving skills that seem to be coming from a version of you who became a scientist. Sometimes you might feel flooded with compassion that seems to be flowing from a version of you who developed as a healer. All these aspects and capacities exist within you simultaneously. You simply learn to consciously access different facets of your inherent multidimensional nature. Your future self learned to perceive himself not as a fixed and limited identity, but as a dynamic and constantly evolving expression of infinite possibility. He understood that consciousness is infinitely creative, and that he can access any quality, any capacity, any wisdom that exists within the unlimited field of potential. This doesn't mean he became a completely different person. It means he remembered that he was never really limited to the small restrictive story he once told about himself. This remembrance of who you really are is available to you right now, not as something you need to achieve through effort or earn through perfect behavior, but as something you can simply choose to consciously access. Every present moment offers the opportunity to step into a more expanded version of yourself. Every decision point functions as a portal to a higher timeline. Every conscious breath is a chance to align more completely with your inherent infinite nature. But accessing these higher aspects of yourself requires what mystical traditions call beginner's mind. This means a genuine willingness to approach each moment with freshness, without the limiting weight of past conditioning or anxious projections about the future. Your future self lives consistently in this beginner's mind because he understands that consciousness is always creating new possibilities. He never rigidly assumes he knows exactly how something will unfold because he remains constantly open to being surprised by existence's infinite creativity. This genuine openness to surprise, to unexpected plot twists, to unanticipated gifts is fundamental to authentically living from your highest timeline. If you're rigidly attached to fixed ideas about how you think your life should unfold, you'll inevitably miss the magic that's trying to emerge through spontaneous opportunities and synchronistic encounters. Your future self learned to hold his vision lightly and flexibly, remaining clear about the essential feeling he wants to embody, but staying flexible about how that feeling expresses itself in concrete form. He discovered through experience that the universe is significantly more creative and resourceful than the limited human mind could ever be. When you try to micromanage exactly how your dreams will manifest, you're inadvertently limiting the infinite ways they could surprise and delight you. But when you consciously focus on the essence of what you desire, the feeling, the energy, the qualitative experience, and then remain genuinely open to how that essence wants to express itself in the physical world, you allow manifestations that can exceed your most optimistic imagination. That's why your future self doesn't obsessively worry about the details of how. He learned that his primary job is to clarify the what and the why, what he wants to experience and why it matters for his growth, and then trust the universe's superior intelligence to orchestrate the how in ways that serve his highest good and simultaneously the highest good of everyone involved. This trust isn't a passive attitude of waiting. It's active and conscious participation in co-creation with universal intelligence. It's showing up completely present for opportunities as they present themselves, taking inspired action when clear guidance arises, and maintaining your elevated energetic frequency even when external circumstances don't yet fully reflect your internal alignment. Your future self learned to be patient with divine timing while remaining urgent about maintaining the right frequency. And as you begin more consciously embodying your future self's energy, you'll notice that the very concept of future begins naturally dissolving. You realize that what you thought was a future version of yourself is actually just a more integrated and coherent version of who you are in this present moment. The wisdom, the love, the clarity, the personal power, all these qualities are already present within you now. Your journey isn't about transforming into someone fundamentally new or different. It's about discovering and expressing who you've always been in your deepest essence. That authentic person isn't a distant future possibility. That person is a present reality existing in the quantum field of all available possibilities, and every conscious choice you make moves you closer to that authentic reality or further from it. The power of choice is always in your hands. The opportunity for alignment is always available in this present moment. Before we conclude this transmission, I want to invite you to participate in something significant. In the comments below, I'd like you to leave a single word that captures the energy you're consciously choosing to embody from here forward. Just one word that represents your genuine commitment to living from your highest self. Maybe it's trust, or alignment, or courage, or flow. Whatever word comes spontaneously first, honor that intuition by writing it in the comments. This isn't simply sharing your thoughts or opinions. This is making a conscious energetic signature to the quantum field. This is clearly declaring to your future self that you've received this transmission and are genuinely ready to embody it in your daily life. The more people make this conscious choice of alignment, the stronger the collective energetic field becomes to support all of us. And if this conversation touched something deep within you, if you feel genuine recognition of the truth in these words, then I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Not just to stay connected to more content, but to remain consciously aligned with your own becoming process. Consider subscribing as an act of commitment to your highest evolution. Every person who consciously chooses to remember and express their true nature creates a ripple effect that touches countless other lives. Your personal transformation literally becomes a gift to the world. Your individual awakening helps facilitate others' awakening. Your courage to embody your highest self gives tacit permission for others to make the same choice. Consider watching this transmission regularly, perhaps each morning to consciously recalibrate your frequency before entering your day. And if someone in your life could benefit from remembering their own quantum nature and unlimited potential, share this content with them. When you consciously share content that expands consciousness, you create an energetic ripple that not only serves those you share with, but also amplifies your own understanding, creating synchronicities and accelerating your manifestation process through the collective consciousness field. Your future self is deeply proud of you for being here, for listening with an open heart, for being willing to consider that there might be a completely different and higher way of living. He has vivid memory of this exact moment as the beginning of everything fundamentally changing in your life. He remembers when you finally understood that you don't need to wait for external permission to become who you're destined to be. The transmission is complete. The message has been delivered with clarity. Now it's entirely up to you to embody it, live it, and become the walking proof that transformation isn't just possible, but inevitable for those who consciously choose it. Your future self is waiting patiently in the quantum field, not with impatience or judgment, but with infinite love and complete certainty that you'll find your way back home, to who you really are in your deepest essence. The only question that remains is, will you consciously answer this call to your highest evolution?